Africa has crowned its new champions. After a tense, dramatic tournament, the Ivory Coast Elephants won the Africa Cup of Nations. A 9-8 penalty victory over Ghana marked the end of a 22-year wait that some even feared was a curse on the team. A team that was always considered one of the best in Africa. Millions of Ivorians took to the streets in celebrations in the capital city of Abidjan, and the government even declared the following day a national holiday. The win brought back a sense of national unity which the country had been longing for the past decade, as the Ivory Coast had suffered from bloody internal conflicts. Today, the country's political and economic arenas are starting to recover from the turmoil. Our focus this week is on Ivory Coast. Hello and welcome to our focus on the Ivory Coast, a country which was divided from 2003 to 2011 between a rebel-held north and a south controlled by forces loyal to its ex-president. Throughout the conflict years, the football national team known as the Elephants were held up a symbol of unity, but the team's failure to achieve glory gave the country only a little cause for celebration. Of course, until last Sunday. And now we're joined by Ricardo Zama, Chief Editor of Sports at RTI, the broadcast authority of Ivory Coast. Hi, and thank you for being with us today.
Merci à vous.
Thank you.
Ricardo, here's a quote coming from a fan after the game. He was saying, Ivory Coast has been reconciled tonight. We don't need politicians to reconcile us. The Elephants did it. Are these the best words maybe to describe the feeling which prevailed among the citizens of the country?
Yes, these words describe perfectly Ivory Coast's victory at a time where we had a divide between northern Ivory Coast and southern Ivory Coast. Football is what managed to open the communication channels. After this victory, Ivorians went to the streets. There was no politics, no religions involved. It was an unbreakable Ivory Coast.
And can we say that this win is historical in terms of sport?
Yes, you can definitely say that. It's been 23 years now. Ivory Coast played last week its fourth final of the African Cup, which the team started participating in 1965. So this year it was the 21st time that the national team was participating in the Cup, with now a second win on February 8th. So it's a historical win.
Apparently there's more into this win than just the title, because the government gave each member of the squad a house worth $52,000 and the same amount in cash.
Oh yes, but it's a very symbolic thing. You see, this victory really brought back people's happiness. Some people had waited a long time to celebrate this. So of course they won something from this cup, but for the people, there is a sense of pride. It made people proud of belonging to this country, and that is not something you can put a price on. Also, you have to be aware that these cash prizes are only symbolic. When you look at the gigantic salaries of some international players like Yaya Toure, who can earn 117 million CFA francs a week, you realize it is a symbolic prize. Ivorians haven't criticized this. On the contrary, they celebrated it, and they are proud of the team for having won this cup after 23 years.
Didier Drogba and Yaya Toure, they are the most famous football Ivorian players worldwide, we can say. How do you feel about them representing your country, and maybe could you describe us their status within their homeland?
Oh, absolutely. Thanks to Didier Drogba and Yaya Toure, the British Chelsea and Manchester clubs can boast having thousands of supporters in Ivory Coast and in Africa in general. They are legends. They bring national pride and they make their public happy, especially after this win of the African Cup a few days ago.
The Elephants have qualified for 3 consecutive World Cups, however, failed to make it beyond the group stage. Do you believe that there's a chance for them in the upcoming tournament, 2018?
Well, it's difficult to predict what will happen in 2018, but I think that we have a nice group of players here, and if the coach will be able to keep working with them for a certain period of time, it could lead to good things.
Is football the most popular sport in Ivory Coast?
Yes, it's the most popular sport. You can see this when you look at football training centers. Only here in Abidjan, there are over 600 training centers, and there are more inside of the country. It's by far the most popular sport in Ivory Coast and even in Africa.
Ricardo Zama, thank you very much. Keep enjoying the game behind you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Less than 4 years ago, the Ivory Coast defaulted on more than $2 billion amid a disputed presidential election, followed by 5 months of violence. This February, the government announced it will sell debt on the international market for the second time in 2 years, as it plans to issue a Eurobond. This in order to fund works for the emergence of the country. Now, to hear more about the economic development of the Ivory Coast, let's bring in Ilan Ziri, CEO of STA Leadcom, who has been working in Africa for over 20 years. Hi, Ilan. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
First, can you tell us what is exactly your company doing in Ivory Coast?
STA, it's a company that's been established here in Ivory Coast in more than 40 years. Today, and we here in Ivory Coast, but we also in the region, in the neighboring country, in the French-speaking country around Ivory Coast. And what STA doing mainly it's to supply, deploy, and doing maintenance for infrastructure in telecom business.
And how developed is this country in terms of technologies and manpower, especially if you compare it to other African countries?
If I take, for instance, our company, so in our company here in Ivory Coast, our worker, we're really giving all the range of this different services. In the different country, the neighboring country, we'll take Ivory Coast people to manage the project there because of those competence that they have here. It's a bigger country, it's a bigger exposure to European experience in education and other that doing the country much more developed to my sense on terms of human resources in our business.
And Ilan, how bringing these technologies affects the everyday life of local people?
It's totally, I think that all the life of the daily life here been changed. It starts from the family level, the communication in between isolated area, cities inside the country, which is a big country, with them family that are here in the capital. So all those relationships are completely different. In way of doing business, the communication, it's cutting those distance short. It will allow to bring education in government project to the inside country and bring all the information that is available on the internet to education or to people that are living on those villages.
And this country has been going through years of political instability and many conflicts, as we heard before. In what way did this affect business?
Yes, I think that this period, the crisis period, has been here for 10 years, since 2002 about until 2011. Yeah. It's not completely paralyzed the country. We did work those years, and we did manage to do the work daily. But together with it, there was very difficult periods, especially the last one. It's bring more than 3,000 dead people they're talking about, and it was quite difficult. Today, it's come down. Now it's more quiet, and we passed completely. Since 2011 and 12, the quiet came back, and Ivory Coast gained back her position.
Ilan Ziri, thank you so much for being with us and bringing all this interesting information.
Thank you.
And now, what else is going on in the Ivory Coast?
The Ivorian government granted a collective presidential pardon to 3,000 prisoners who committed minor infractions, which were said to be a result of their vulnerable state. The inmates were released on good behavior and are not considered to be a danger to society. Police in Ivory Coast have set up a special unit to investigate a series of suspected ritual killings of children. More than 20 children have been kidnapped and killed across the country in recent weeks, and most of the bodies have shown signs of mutilation. The UN Children's Agency, UNICEF, will be involved in the investigation as well. Ivory Coast's former First Lady Simone Gbagbo went on trial recently. She is accused of helping her husband steal an election in 2010. If she is found guilty, the former First Lady could be sentenced to 20 years to life in prison for a crime against state security. Ivory Coast is hoping to reach a production of 1.6 million tons of rice by the end of February 2015. The goal has been set as part of a national campaign to extend the increase of rice production in the country, which has been observed since 2010. The Ivorian government has rewarded the national football team with millions of dollars in prizes for winning the Africa Cup of Nations. President Ouattara gave each member of the team a house worth $52,000 and the same amount in cash. The Ivorian Football Federation and the team's technical staff also received rewards.
Ivory Coast leads the world in production and export of the cocoa beans used in the manufacture of chocolate. As of 2009, it supplies 30% of cocoa produced in the world. The country also produces palm oil and coffee, but the local cuisine has much more flavors than this to offer. Francois Adusapim, the owner of the famous Abu Susan restaurant in Abidjan, is now going to give us a short tour in his kitchen. Let's take a look at his restaurant. Hello, and thank you for being with us.
Bonsoir.
So Abu Susan means family in Agni. Is that the family spirit which inspired you, to open this restaurant? And maybe is this what you're looking to bring into your restaurant?
Yes,
Abu Swan means family in Agni. It means we are all together. Back when I was a child, when my grandmother used to make dinner, she always kept a portion on the side. And I used to ask her why she did that, and she said perhaps a brother of yours that you don't know will come. That's where Abu Swan comes from. It's about being together. That's what it means.
Tell
us a bit about your dishes, especially about the tumudi porcupine. How does one cook a porcupine?
Well, for now we don't make porcupine because of Ebola. But we usually cook it on a low fire. We braise it. We also have here the taro leaves, which is a French spinach dish. And we also have a dish called the Ladies of Mosul. It's a shrimp dish. We call it the Ladies of Mosul because back at the time of the war, men used to go to war and the women were the ones going to catch the shrimp.
Francois, thank you for this interview.
Thank you.
Many people living in Western countries like to add a kick of ethnicity to their living rooms and decorate it with some traditional African art pieces, such as African masks or sculptured figures. However, not everyone is actually aware of the interesting stories behind these pieces. Now, Leon Nigueta is an Ivorian artist who owns a very well-known art gallery in Abidjan and is here to tell us what these masks are actually hiding. Hello, Leon, and thank you for joining us.
Good evening.
All right. Your gallery is called Amani Tribal Concept. Can you explain to us what is actually a tribal gallery?
Well, the tribal concept comes mainly from the fact that when I create an object, I use shapes and writing that were used in ancient tribal societies. That's what it refers to.
Tell us about the colons, these statues we see next to you here.
Of course I can explain. So the colons that you see behind me are traditionally called colons, but I actually changed the name a bit and I call them gentlemen, businessmen. But the colon is a character that has a lot of history here in Ivory Coast. Originally, it was a little sculpture made by people in the villages, the natives, to represent the colonizers, the settlers.
Well, Western settlers, as you say, but they are black.
Yes, and there is reason for that. The sculpture that we call colon is not really meant to represent the colonizer as the white person. It's more of an attempt of the native African black people to project themselves onto the character of the colonizer. So they used to dress like the white European people, wear hats like them. But the colons have also evolved with time. As you can see here, he is wearing an American hat. His suit is very modern and elegant, so it's not the same as it used to be.
And what kind of materials are used in African art?
Essentiellement le bois.
Mainly wood, but in recent years we also use a lot of metal that we recycle to make it into useful objects, or to use in furniture. Oftentimes we take this used metal from oil tins, for example, because they're easy to find.
Can you maybe tell us a bit about contemporary African art, which we're not very familiar with?
L'art contemporain ivoirien.
Well, ivory and contemporary art is quite popular lately. There was a whole school of thought in terms of art that started in the 70s. At first, it was a lot of recycling of objects, local materials, and also natural products. Today, I think ivory and contemporary art is inspired by artists like Jean-Michel Basquiat with primitivism and neo-expressionism.
De matière locale, de travail avec la terre.
Leon Uguera, thank you so much.
My pleasure, thank you.
Well, time is up. Just remember that next week we have another focus on a different country. Now let's say goodbye on a very happy, joyful tone. Take a look at Didier Drogba's family, full of emotion while watching him winning.
Coupa!